Hello, I'm Michael Kenyon and I'm the theatre programme organiser for Vocalise. Thank you for watching this video, which is rather ominously called What Can Go Wrong. We have 3 regular attendees of Audio Described Theatre who are going to talk a little bit about some of the problems they've faced on occasion when attending audio described performances. As I am now, they'll talk directly to the camera and they'll introduce themselves at the beginning. So to keep things simple, we haven't added in audio description.
My name's Toby Davey. I'm registered blind and this is my guide dog, Kerry.
Hi, my name is Kieran and I enjoy many challenges in life.
My name is John. I'm a lass in my mid-70s now. I suppose I describe myself as a Liverpool Welshman. My family come from Wales. I grew up in Liverpool, but I've lived in London for the last more than 40 years now.
One of the things that upsets me about an audio described performance that goes wrong is if when you're ringing the theatre that actually the staff on the box office aren't quite sure about when the show is occurring or even if it's occurring. It's really frustrating if you've got to explain them about an audio described performance that you know about because you've seen it on the website or you've heard about it from a friend, and actually the staff aren't quite sure and you're left hanging on the phone for hours and hours until eventually you explain it and they get it.
Right. I think the sorts of things that can go wrong when you go to the theatre for an audio described performance is, first of all, it is nothing to do with the audio description. It's actually finding your way into the theatre and getting to your seat. If it's a very congested area in the entrance to the theatre, often you're bumping your way around, and if the theatre hasn't geared itself up to welcome blind and partially sighted visitors, and this is an area where you can either use your front of house staff if you've got them, or volunteers. You could well be trained to help people experiencing sight loss to enjoy the visit to the theatre. A warm welcome is really essential. That it can go wrong at that point, and that could spoil people's enjoyment of the whole evening if they get agitated and worked up.
Another frustrating thing that could occur on an audio described performance that is just not working as well as it could do is when you arrive at the theatre and people aren't sure where the touch tour is taking place, or even if the touch tour has taken place, or you're standing waiting for a long while, and that can be really frustrating. You're really excited and you're really looking forward to the beginning of your theatre experience, and you've got to stand in the lobby and wait in a cramped space.
I think then things that can go wrong, if a touch tour, for instance, isn't adequately managed, then often the blind and partially sighted patron can be left standing around not quite knowing what to do with themselves. I think you need enough people at the touch tour. Normally there'll be a describer there, but you need some front of house staff or some other staff from the theatre to assist people if they haven't got their own guides with them. And also for safety reasons, particularly if it's a proscenium march with a 3'6" drop in front of the stage, you need to be rather careful you don't get sued for people's broken legs or whatever. So I think managing the touch tour, there's nothing better than a really well managed touch tour. There's nothing worse than one that's chaotic with too many people milling around in too small a space without enough people to manage it and organise it properly.
One of the most disappointing things for me in terms of an audio described performance that just isn't happening all of the way it should do is when the headsets break down. The most important thing about going to see a show is being able to understand what's going on, to have the describer describing it, and if you miss even a part of that show, it's really, really disappointing. It's your one show. There could be a whole 4 weeks or 8 weeks run, but you only have that one Saturday afternoon or that Friday afternoon evening or the Wednesday afternoon, and if you've lost that and you can't go and see that show again, it's probably the most hardest and disappointing thing, and I have to say that really does upset me a lot.
If you're listening to the describer and, you know, they're in a very noisy room and you can hear sort of clutter in the background, that's really distracting, because when you're listening to audio description, you just want to listen to the describer's voice, and they should be just sort of coming in and out when they need to describe, and you don't want to hear everything else, because it can distract you from not only what the describers are saying, but from the actors as well.
And then in the theatre itself, what can go wrong? First of all, there are the technical things, making sure that the signal that reaches the headphones with the audio description is working properly. And I don't know about this in a technical sense, but I do know it from the consumer end, if you like. And there's nothing worse than a signal that's breaking up or is intermittent breaks in the thing, because you come to a vital part of the play and suddenly you've missed it because either your seat isn't getting the signal very clearly. And I think that just needs to be checked and tested in advance, and make sure all the batteries in the headsets are charged up, and that you check that people are getting decent reception. Although they're usually very simple to operate, some people do find even the simplest things difficult to operate. And I think those are the main things. And I think then making sure that in the interval people aren't just left sitting where they are if they're on their own and they haven't got a companion with them. And after the theatre, making sure they get out safely and they get on their journey. And I think if patrons are considered in that sort of way, if you like, the journey from when they entered the theatre to when they leave it after their audio description, if you treat people who have sight loss well, they're going to come back to your theatre, and they won't be afraid of the experience as so many people tend to be. I mean, one of the problems about being blind or partially sighted is that you tend to feel safer in familiar environments, and often going into an unfamiliar environment like a theatre is actually quite scary, because particularly if you don't have your own guide with you, and it can be quite frightening. And if you can take away that fear factor and give people good experience, they'll come back to your theatre and they'll come regularly.